So let's begin by davening that the fruit of our learning should help to bring home all of the rest of the hostages and protect our soldiers and Am Yisrael, all of the innocents, bring a speedy end to our wars, and be an Ilui Neshama for my mother, Shlomo Leah Bas, Menachem Mendel Rachel.
Amen.
And with that, we're going to continue. So, Michael Werner, you said you probably wouldn't have time to go back.
Actually, it turned out that I was able to listen to most of the recording.
Okay, good. So, what we're going to do today, we're going to continue in the sugya. I want to just mention this is also kind of a sad point, not to do with the Gemara directly, but so we were talking about tafidna, which apparently is scurvy. I listened to an interview with Tal Shoham, who was one of the released hostages, and it's a long interview. Anyone who's interested, I'll send you the link. It's an interview in Hebrew, and he mentioned that he was diagnosed with tafidna. He said nobody's ever heard of this tafidna, but it's used in modern Hebrew to refer to scurvy, and he described, and you probably know from reading that most of the time he was there, his diet consisted of a single pizza that had to be divided between him and two or three other prisoners. That was mostly the food that he ate. So he had, among other problems, he had a severe lack of vitamin C, and he had scurvy. So that was a kind of a sad context to hear about Safidna. But in any event, okay. All right. So what did we get up to? Let's just do a little bit of a review. So we're talking about sorry, I'm still a little bit out of it myself. Okay. We had the story with Rabbi Yochanan back here. Urama Rabbi Mati, Rabbi Yochanan Chash v'tzafidna. Rabbi Yochanan had this, he became ill, let's say, with tzafidna, and then he went to this woman, this matronita, to be treated and so forth. And we went through this, and eventually she gives him the remedy that she was using. The Gemara then talks about what specifically the remedy was. I think this is where we picked up from last time, right? Ma'avadale. What did this woman treat him with? And so we had a machoket between Rav Acha Berei and Rav Ami, who said it was Mesa or Shemen Zayid the Melach, and I contended that Mesor is probably the spill off from sourdough, a sourdough starter. Rav Yemar says Saor Gufe, which is the sourdough itself, the sourdough starter itself, and Shemen Zayit and Melach. And Rav Ashi said Mishcha de Gadfa de Abza. Right? It was the marrow that comes from the wing of a goose. Then Amar Abaye, so Abaye said, I did all of these and I did not, and I wasn't healed. So Abaye apparently also had Safidna, and he said, I tried all of these and they didn't work. Ada Marli Hahu Tayaya, till that one, this one nomad, right? A Tayaya, I think we mentioned, is sometimes translated as an Arab or nomad or some kind of a wandering merchant sometimes. But anyway, some sort of random fellow told him that he told me to bring the the date pits from dates that had not grown a third, right? They're less than a third grown, and then to toast them in fire on a new hoe, and then presumably to to crush them and then to put them onto his teeth and gums. And he said I did that and I was healed. So then the Gemara said, "Mimai hava." So what is it from? What's the source of tzafidna? So they said, Gemara said, it's from uh, bread, from wheat bread that's too hot, or from the leftovers from Casa de Harsana. Casa de Harsana, we said, is a dish that was made from fish that was fried with its own oil and flour. And my simane, what is it? What are the signs? In other words, what are the symptoms of tzafidna? And it said, "Kadrami midi bechake, v'ase demami beidari." So when you literally threw something, if you put something onto your teeth, and blood would come out from the row of teeth. Blood apparently comes out from the gums. Okay. And then we talked about Rabbi Yochanan kichash b'tzafidna avad hachi b'shabta v'itasi. Rashi says this part we leave out, and I mentioned this part of the sugya, parts of the sugya appear in the Gemara and Avodah Zarah, where it has to do with limitations of receiving medical treatment from idol worshippers for various reasons. But in any event, what happened? Rabbi Yochanan, when he fell ill with tzafidna, he did this on Shabbos, and then he was cured. So again, it's testimony to this idea that Rabbi Yochanan had suffered from tzafidna, and he did take treatment on Shabbos. The Gemara says, how did Rabbi Yochanan do that? In other words, how could he have done that? Because you're not supposed to take any kind of remedy on Shabbos. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, shani tzafidna hu matchil b'peh v'gomer b'bnei me'ayin. It's different because it begins in the mouth and it ends up in your intestines, ends up in your belly, your intestines. So, and what's the point? So we understand the Gemara there makes it more clear that anything that's in any kind of internal ailment was considered to be dangerous to the point that one would be allowed to treat it on Shabbos. Okay, so I think this is what we're up.
Would it be allowed or required?
Good question. Good question. It might be required, and I'm going to leave that question open for now because we're going to return to it. Okay, so Michael Werner, why don't you start reading? I'm really rough, but I'll make this larger just a second.
I do one thing to make it more visible on my computer here. Okay. There we go. Amar le Rav Hia bar Ava le Rabbi Yochanan. Come on. Rabbi Matya ben Harash de'emar hachoshesh befiv matilin lo sam בשבת. אמר לי שאני אומר בזו ולא באחרת.
Okay. So can you explain this? Can you translate this for us?
Okay, so Rabbi here Bar Abba said to Rabbi Yochanan, how is this so? That
Well,
he,
no, that's not kiman means what? What's kiman? What does man mean? Okay, let's define terms. Michael Schwartz. What does kiman mean?
Like who? Who is he following? Whose opinion is he following?
Right. So man just means one or person. Kiman would be like whom, like like which person. In other words, what's Rabbi Yochanan, of course, was a first generation Amora and the Gadol Hador of his generation. But Rav Chia Bar Abba wants to know what his source from Tanaitic, from the Tanaim is, that he would be able to treat himself or take treatment for Tzafidna on Shabbos. So so apparently Rav Chia Bar Abba continues to offer an answer. And what does he say? So like whom? He says, go ahead.
like Rabbi Amatya ben Harash, who said, someone who suspects in his mouth matalinlo, he's coming down with scurvy.
Well, okay, so first of all, Hosheshu doesn't mean suspect. What does it mean?
Oh, he's coming down with in his mouth.
Yeah, okay,
He's being stricken with.
okay. And metilin means what? Lahatil, natal. Michael Schwartz, what do you say?
To put in or to place.
To place, right? Lahatil. Same root as natilat yadayim. Lintol or lahatil. Okay, so he put some. So some here means what?
Some of the remedy, whatever it is.
Yeah, so some means a drug and it can mean a remedy. And so, yeah, so what did Matya ben Harash say?
So somebody who suspects that he's coming down with scurvy, like he's coming down with something in his mouth, which presumably means scurvy, he places remedy in his mouth on Shabbat.
Right, so again, I'll say Choshesh doesn't mean he suspects, but it means that he has.
This is stricken by scurvy. I'm sorry. Yes, of course. I was. Yeah.
Okay. So he can. So right. So to put it in other words, so somebody who's suffering already in his mouth can take a remedy for it on Shabbos. So why would Rav Chia Bar Abba think that this is the source for Rabbi Yochanan? What did Rabbi Yochanan do?
He took a remedy for scurvy on Shabbat.
Okay, and so why is this a source for him to allow him to do that?
Because it says that if you've been stricken by scurvy, then you take a remedy. Then you place a remedy in your mouth on Shabbat.
Okay, it seems to be the same thing, right? It's a little more broad because it just is a choshesh b'fiv, but we understand that tzafidna certainly falls into that category. Maybe there are other things that fall into that category, but certainly tzafidna would fall into this category. And the Gemara just explained that tzafidna begins in the mouth, but it can end up internally, in which case we consider it from the time you have first symptoms to be a sakana for which you could take a remedy on Shabbat. So this is what Rav Chia Bar Abba says to Rabbi Yochanan,
So just to clarify, the mouth is considered to be outside. I mean, on its own would be considered to be outside of the body, but in this particular case, it could go further in, so it's treated as if it was inside the body.
Right. So this is that question, whether the mouth is the inside or the outside of the body, is exactly the subject of this discussion as it appears in Avodah Zarah. So I think eventually we'll get into that. So, but for this purpose, yes, what you said will be more or less the case. That is that this kind of problem that begins in the mouth that ends up internally is something for which you can take, according to Rabbi Matya ben Charash, you can take a remedy for that on Shabbos. So Amar Le, he said to him that I say in this one and not in another one. So who said first? Who said to whom?
Um, so Rabbi here was speaking of.
Well, let's follow it. Amar Le Rav Chia bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Chia bar Abba said to Rabbi Yochanan, Kiman, ki Rabbi Matya ben Charash, Amar Choshesh b'fi b'tilim lo sam b'Shabbat.
Okay.
Amar Le, he said to him. So who is speaking to whom now?
This would be Rabbi Matya then, Matya ben Charash.
No.
No, okay, then I'm off.
Okay. Rabbi Matya ben Charash didn't speak at all. Who spoke? Who spoke until now? Take a minute. Just I know you're a little out of it. Take a minute. Rav Chia bar Abba said to Rabbi Yochanan, like whom? Like Rabbi Matya ben Charash, who said, "Achoshesh b'fi v'tilin lo b'tzam b'Shabbat." So who said all of that? Who said from Kiman?
Rabbi Yochanan.
Again, Amar le Rav Chia bar Abba li Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Chia bar Abba said to Rabbi Yochanan, Kiman, ki Rabbi Matya ben Charash Amar Choshesh b'fi v'tilin lo b'tzam b'Shabbat. So who was speaking?
Oh, so Rav here.
Rav Chia bar Abba was speaking. Who was he speaking to?
Rabbi Yochanan.
So Amar le, he said to him, now who's speaking to whom?
Rabbi Yochanan speaking back to Rav here.
Very good. So this is a short exchange between Rav Chia bar Abba to Rabbi Yochanan. It is a little confusing. I'm not saying it's not, but it's why I try to lay out the Gemara the way I do to try to facilitate this kind of reading. But the reason it's confusing is because Rav Chia bar Abba starts off with a question, and then you might think that Rabbi Yochanan answers him. That's where it becomes confusing. But we understand from the final Amar Le, from the last part, that Amar Le must be Rabbi Yochanan speaking to Rav Chia bar Abba, because he's coming to limit Rav Chia bar Abba's conjecture. He's coming to limit whatever came right before. So let's understand this a little bit more closely. So Rav Chia bar Abba said to Rabbi Yochanan, Kimat, meaning, who did you hold like? Who were you relying on amongst the Tanaim to take a remedy for your ailment on Shabbat? It sounds, say, Kirebi Matya ben Charash. So he's offering himself what he thinks must be the answer, which is, you must have been relying on Rabbi Matya ben Charash, because he says almost explicitly what you did, that somebody who's suffering in his mouth, he can take a remedy on Shabbos. So that would seem to be the source Rav Chia bar Abba is saying to Rabbi Yochanan, that would seem to be your source. Amar Leis, Rabbi Yochanan says to him, Shani Omer bezu v'lo ba'acheret. I say in this one, but not in another one, not in any other one. So what is Rabbi Yochanan saying? What does he mean? I'm saying about this and not another one.
There's somebody at my door. I need to hang on. I don't know what's going on here.
Okay, go ahead. Michael Schwartz, what are you saying? Oh, okay.
Actually, I don't know what that is about, but I'm assuming it's something I don't recognize. I'm not in my own house, and so I'm not answering the door.
Okay, I think that's wise. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan says to Rav Chia bar Abba, who wants to know his Tannaitic source for having taken remedy on Shabbos, he says, I say it about this, but not about another. So what did he say about this and not about another? What's that referring to?
This statement refers to Svidna, but not another ailment, or this remedy and not another.
Okay, so we might understand it that way. In other words, that he's saying, I say it about this particular instance, that either tzvidna or like tzvidna, that it's choshesh b'fiv, but I don't say about another. So what other what other could Rav Chia bar Abba might have thought he was talking about? Or in other words, what other is pertinent to this discussion or connected to this discussion? Michael Schwartz, you wanna?
So earlier, Rabbi Matya ben Charash said a cure for a person being bitten by a rabid dog is to eat the part of the part of the liver of the dog.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Rabbi Yochanan would not agree with that.
Okay, so in other words, what does it mean then more specific? Amar le shani omer bezu, meaning I hold like Rebbe, oh, here's Paul, 1 second. I hold like Rebbe Matya ben Charash regarding this, meaning regarding Hachoshesh Befiv, but not another case. And what other case could there be? Another case there would be Matya ben Charash Pasket. So, right. Just a second. I want to, instead of flipping around, just a second, let me just bring up another, let me just get another window up here. 1 second. This will be better than if we have to flip back and forth in my text. Just a sec. Okay, just to remind us, Rebbe, this is the mission that we've been working on for the last whatever couple of months. Misha chazal bulmus malchino to fil dvarim tmeim ad she'ero einav. Misha neshacho kelev shoteh ein malchino to mechatzer kaved shalo. Right, Tanakama holds that somebody's bitten by a rabid dog. You don't feed him from this extension of the liver. Rabbi Matya ben Charash Matir. Rabbi Matya ben Charash permits that as a treatment for someone who's bit by a rabid dog. The Odamar Rabbi Matya ben Charash, Hachoshesh bigrono. This is the way it's brought down in the Mishnah. The way Rav Chia brings it down is Hachoshesh bifiv. There may be a difference there, but we're not right now. It's not that important. Rabbi Mati ben Charash says that if somebody is suffering in their throat, we give him a remedy in his mouth on Shabbat. So Rabbi Mati ben Charash said two things in the Mishnah. One was regarding Kelev Shoteh and the remedy for Kelev Shoteh, which he was matir, and he was also matir to give a remedy for a Choshesh Bigrono on Shabbat. So this is apparently what Rabbi Yochanan is saying back to Rav Chia bar Abba. Because what's the point? Rav Chia bar Abba, why is it important for Rav Chia bar Abba to know? Because if it's true that Rabbi Yochanan held like Rabbi Matya ben Charash regarding Metilin lo Sam b'Shabbat, so maybe he also holds like him regarding treatment for Kelev Shoteh. So Rabbi Yochanan understands that that's the direction the Rav Chia bar Abba is going, and he says, "Shani omer bizu v'lo ba'acheret." What I hold, in other words, I say like this. In other words, I hold like Rabbi Mati ben Charash regarding Hoshesh Befiv on that you're mitilin lo sam b'Shabbat, but not in any other. Let's look at Rashi for a second. So, Michael Schwartz. Rashi's Girsa here is a little different than our Gemara, but go ahead and read it.
Shani Omer Bazo, Modim Lo Chachamim.
Do this one. Kimana vid Rabbi Yochanan.
I'm sorry. Kamana vid Rabbi Yochanan. The Tet Sam b'Shabbat v'Shvil Chulei Ashinim. Shinayim. The Ka'amar La I Mitzrichna Mai.
Okay, so can you, translate that?
Who was the one that Rabbi Yochanan did like to, in order to give a remedy on Shabbat for the illness in the teeth, that it says, if I need what?
Right. The ka'amar imatzrichna mai. If I would need it, what? In other words, what would be the din? Okay. So again, it's a little bit different in the way it's presented in our Gemara, but basically it's going to end up the same. And he said Shani. So Rabbi Yochanan says Shani Omer Bezuk. So go ahead.
Shani Omer Bazo Modim Lo Chachamim Shehi Rafua Lo Bekelev Shoteh Bechatzar Kaved Shalom. That I say in this that he agrees with the Chachamim that it's
the Chachamim agree with him.
Oh yes, the Modim. The Chachamim agree with him that it is refu, that it's a cure for him, for a rabid dog that eating his part of that liver.
Yeah. So this part of Rashi is a little bit I don't understand it. I'm not sure I understand this. Wait, I just wanted hold on 1 second. Yeah. Right. I knew there must be a tikkun here, and I didn't bother to put it in. The Masoras Hashas changes the girsa here, because what it sounds like is that it sounds like Modim lo Chachamim shirufu la bekelo shoteh b'chatzer kaved shelo, that the Chachamim acknowledge, they agree with Rav Matya ben Charash that this is a refuah for him regarding the Kelev Shoteh. And clearly that's not true. In other words, that clearly they don't. And so this, which I'll have to put a footnote in, should have figured this out last night. It should say, uh, it should say velo with an aleph. That's better. Okay. I'm sorry. I did the whatever. I have no good excuse, but I knew that there was something wrong with that. I knew that somebody must fix it, but I didn't know what it. Okay, so let's keep on track here. So at this point, what do we know? We know that Rabbi Yochanan says that you can take a remedy if you have tefidna on Shabbat. You can take a remedy for that. Rav Chia bar Abba wants to know what's the source for Rabbi Yochanan saying such a thing. It must be from this Mishnah of Rabbi Matya ben Charash, our Mishnah, where he says that a choshesh b'fi metilin lo b'sam b'Shabbat. But Rabbi Yochanan says to him, Shani omer bezu v'lo b'acheret. He wants to clarify that he holds like Rabbi Matya ben Charash in this limited case of choshesh b'fi or choshesh b'grono, but not like Rabbi Matya ben Charash regarding the cure for someone who's bit by a kelev shoteh, which is seed from the Chatzir Kaved. Okay, so Michael Schwartz, continue reading. Lema Messiah Le.
Lema Messiah Le, Misha Chozo Yerkon, Machlin Oto Basar Chamor, Misha Nasko Kelev Shoteh, Machlin Oto Michatzar Kaved Shalo, Hachoshesh Papiv Mitilin Lo Sam B'Shabbat, Divrei Rebbe Matya ben Charash. V'chachamim omrim be'ilu ein behem b'shum refuah be'elu lemote my la lemote sam lo lemote makizin dam lisron k.
Okay, so first let's just look at this Bryce. So first of all, what does Lema Messiah Le mean?
Let's say that it helps him, Rabbi Yochanan.
Right. So in other words, let's say that we have a source, another Tanaitic source, that is going to come as a help to Rabbi Yochanan. In other words, it'll come to support Rabbi Yochanan's position. So let's just clarify. What's Rabbi Yochanan's position? What are we trying to support?
That if you are stricken in your mouth, i.e., presumably by Sina, then you can put a remedy in your mouth.
On put a remedy in your mouth when
you're on Shabbat. I'm sorry. Yes.
On Shabbat, that's the chiddush that you can take this remedy on Shabbat. And what else is Rabbi Yochanan's position?
He's not holding like Rabbi Chia ben Charash that if you're bitten by a rabid dog, you eat the lobe with the liver.
Okay, so those are the two things that we know about Rabbi Yochanan. So let's say this comes as a support. So what does it say? Michael, wait, who was reading? Michael Schwartz. Misha chazo yerakon machilinato b'sar chamor. So what does that mean?
So one that is afflicted with a disease known as Yeracon, I think we translated last week as jaundice, you feed him the meat of a donkey.
Okay, go ahead.
one that's bitten by a rabid dog, we feed him the part of the liver of the dog.
Okay. And what's the third thing?
And one that's is afflicted with the sphena, the scurvy or a problem in the mouth, you place in his mouth the remedy on Shabbat. And this is the words of Rabbi Matya ben Charash.
Okay, so now we have three dinim from Rabbi Matya ben Charash. So which ones did we already have, and what's the one that we didn't have already?
So the first one is new, dealing with the jaundice.
Okay, so that one is new. That one is not mentioned in the Mishnah. So now we have three things that Rabbi Matya ben Charash is matir. So one of them is the remedy for Yerakon, which according to him is donkey meat, right? So obviously that's not kosher, and he's matir to eat it because it's a cure for jaundice. And the second one is if you're bit by a rabid dog, that you can eat from the chatzek kaved. And the third one is a choshesh befiv, that you can take a sum on Shabbat, right? So the first two are issues of kashrut, which have to be overridden on any day of the week in order to take the remedy. And the third one is an issue regarding Shabbos. So this is what Rabbi Matya ben Charash says. What do the Chachamim say? Michael Schwartz.
That they're not a refuah, but they use that word be'ilu, which
Right, or
implies that there's
be'elu, right?
be'ilu, which implies that there's an exclusion.
Right. In other words, why does it imply that there's an exclusion?
It could simply have said ein behem mishum refuah. It didn't need to qualify it.
Right. It could also, right, could have said Chachamim Osrim. It could say, they could have said Ein Behem Yishum Refuah, like with, but it said Be'elu Ein Behem Yishum Refuah. With these, these ones do not constitute a refuah. Okay. So the Gemara asks, Be'elu Limute Mai. I also want to say, I think I mentioned this in a previous time. Here it says lima ote mai. I'm not sure. I think I told you the nikud here is not always trustworthy. What I can tell you is in yeshiva we would say lima ute mai, but whatever works as long as we understand. Lima ute mai means to exclude what, right? It's the same root as the word ma'at, which means a little bit in Hebrew, and the lima'et means to exclude. In other words, it's to limit. You're limiting. So what limiting? What is it excluding? When the Chachamim say be'elu ein behem yishum refuah, what are they coming to exclude? So before we go to the answer, what does the Gemara mean? What are they coming to exclude? What could they possibly want to limit or exclude?
The base is saying that one cannot take whatever remedies they're excluding on Shabbat for these particular ailments.
Well, only one of them is pertinent on Shabbat. In other words, only one of them is a chiddush for Shabbat, and that's Matilian lo sam befiv. The other ones are chidushim, as we just said, because you're feeding somebody treif. So that would be true for any day of the week. So, but the point is what? Rabbi Mati ben Charash said three things. He gave three heterim for different remedies. Now the Chachamim say, these do not constitute refuah. If they don't constitute refuah, then what?
Then they're
What's the
prohibited.
effect? Then they would be prohibited. So these don't constitute a refuah, and therefore they're going to be prohibited. So the Gemara wants to know what these are the Chachamim referring to. So what are the possibilities?
One or two of the three?
so it's going to be, so be'elu is a plural, right? Be'elu is a plural. So it means that that means two of the above do not constitute a refuah. So that would be the pshat, right? Because it says be'elu with these. Chachamim say these do not constitute refuah, so it must mean that two of them don't constitute a refuah. One of them does constitute a refuah. So be'elu limute mai. So what is it coming to exclude? That whatever is excluded is going to be mutar, right? Because Chachamim say be'elu ein behem mishum refuah. That leaves one that they do think is a refuah, and therefore it will be permitted. My love limute sam. So why don't we say that the be'elu comes to exclude the case of mitilin lo sam b'Shabbat? Sam is just a shorthand for that case, right? Why don't we say that? Now, why would I want that to be the case? Why would I want it to be that the case that is excluded is Matilin Lo Sam B'Shabbat? Michael Schwartz.
Because that gives it helps Rabbi Yochanan. That gives support for Rabbi Yochanan's position or his actions.
Right. And the whole reason I brought this Braita is to say maybe this could be a support for Rabbi Yochanan. That is, in other words, right now, Rabbi Yochanan is paskening like Rav Matya ben Charash, but it's not obvious that he should pasken like Rav Matya ben Charash, because after all, Rav Matya ben Charash seems to have a disagreement with the Chachamim. And what's the general rule? If I have a disagreement between a named Tana and the Chachamim, who should I pasken like?
Chachamim.
I should pasken like the Chachamim. So it's not obvious immediately that he should pasken like Rabbi Matya ben Charash. So, Gemara says, but here's a Braita that could support Rabbi Yochanan's position, because why? If it's true that the Chachamim, when they say be'elu ein behen mishum refuah, they're excluding Matilin lo sam b'Shabbat, which they do think is the refuah, then it turns out that what? That the Chachamim agree with Rabbi Matya ben Charash regarding Matilin lo sam b'Shabbat. And how does that help Rabbi Yochanan?
Because that's what Rabbi Yochanan is doing. Did.
Well, or more specifically, that he paskened that way, and so now what are we going to say? He wasn't paskening like a dat yachid. He wasn't paskening like a singular opinion of Rabbi Matya ben Charash, but he was paskening also like the Chachamim. This was a point that the Chachamim agreed with Rabbi Matya ben Charash. He agreed that that's something that they agreed. So it means that this was a majority opinion. So let's just look at this again. Lema Messiah. Let's say that we have a Braita that can support Rabbi Yochanan's position. So what's the support going to be? We have three dinim that are said by Rabbi Matya ben Charash. One is Misha Chazo Yerakon Machinoto Basar Chamor. One is the guy who gets bit by a rabid dog that he eats the Chatzer Kaved. And the third one is Choshesh B'Fiv, who gets Matilin Lo Sam B'Shabbat. Those are the three dinim of Rabbi Matya ben Charash. The Chachamim say these do not constitute refuah. These, meaning it must mean 2 out of 3 don't constitute a refuah on Shabbat. So the Gemara says, why don't I say that the 2 that don't constitute a refuah are going to be the Yerakon and the Kelev Shoteh, and that would leave a Choshesh Befiv, where the Chachamim are effectively saying that is a refuah to take Sam b'Shabbat, and therefore they would be agreeing with Rabbi Matya ben Charash. So it would be everybody holds this din. So it would be a very good support for Rabbi Yochanan. So Gemara says, "Be'ele mute my lovely mute sam." So Michael Schwartz just finished off lo.
Lo lemote makizin dam esroche. No, it's coming to exclude makizin dam, bloodletting for the stronche, whatever that was.
Right, for sunche, which is something we haven't mentioned at all. In other words, there's another way of understanding be'elu. Be'elu could refer to all 3. It could refer to all 3, but it still has to exclude something, right? Because otherwise they wouldn't have used the word elu. Elu in contrast to what? So when the Chachamim say be'elu ein behem mishum refuah, these ones they don't constitute refuah. They mean none of these 3 constitute refuah. So if that's true, why did they say be'elu? Why didn't they just say Chachamim Osrim or Mashalo Yeh? Because they wanted to exclude the case of a different a refuah that wasn't mentioned in this list, which is that that one lets blood, that there's bloodletting that's done for stronche. So it's referring to a 4th case that's not mentioned at all. Now, how does the Gemara know that? We'll see. We'll put this together in a few minutes. But let's try to. You know what? I'm going to skip Rashi except for Sronche. I'm just going to let's just read these 2. A lot of Rashi here you see is Hachi Garcinan. Rashi sets up the girsa. I'm going to read this part and then we're going to continue. I'm going to skip this first part. This is what he was saying to him. B'shtayim rishonot ein zu refuah gemura lavur alein dvar Torah. The first 2. What did the Chachamim say? The Chachamim are saying that the first 2 refuot that are listed by Rabbi Matya ben Charash in the Braita, those are not considered to be a full remedy to the extent that I would allow you to violate an Easter Dioraita, right? So that's the case of Yerakon and the case of Kelev Shoteh. But it would exclude some Yesh Bo Mishum Refuah. It would exclude the case of taking a remedy for the whatever affliction you have in your mouth. So that's what we think maybe the Chachamim are saying, and the Gemara says no. Limute mikizin dam esrunchi b'Shabbat. Rashi adds in the word Shabbat because otherwise to be makiz dam is something that people did on a regular basis when it wasn't Shabbos. We know from many places in the Gemara that was done as like a prophylactic remedy to do bloodletting. But this would be a specific heter to let blood on Shabbos because of srunchi. And what does it mean? The olam akulei hanach pligi. It in fact it's true that the Chachamim here are always going to disagree. Akulei hanach al kol elu chokim. They disagree with all 3 of the things that Rebbe Matya brought. Umay be'elu. So then, why did they use this term be'elu, which implies mishum because they heard the Rabbi Matya said about something else. He said that in addition to the three that he mentioned there was a fourth one. So the way we're reading, the way the Gemara reads the Braita is Rabbi Mati ben Charash says three things, and now we're saying Chachamim disagree with all of those three things, but they agree with him about one other thing that isn't mentioned in the Braita, and that is to let blood on Shabbos for Srunchli. So what's Srunchli? Rashi says Choli Shishmo, something in Old French, Astron Lyon, which the people who translate Rashi says means askara, which is diphtheria. Who bon malan? I don't know what that means. Sounds like it's French to me, but I don't know. Maybe Paul, if that makes sense. Bon is good. Malant, I don't know. Anyway, lo yodea. But anyway, Rashi seems to think that sunchi is diphtheria. Machalat hagachlit. Machalat hagachlit is anthrax. Ubahahi modele. So, it's not clear to me if these are two. I'm not exactly sure how to read this Rashi altogether, but the sunchi is either diphtheria and or anthrax, both of which can display on the skin. Diphtheria displays mostly in the throat, and anthrax can display on the skin. I wanted to ask my brother about this. I was looking at different websites. Doesn't matter. The point is, there srunchi, whatever srunchi is, bahahi modele. It should be modu. In other words, that Chachamim agreed with Rabbi Matya ben Charash, who held that you can be mekiz dam as a cure for srunchi on Shabbos. Fine. So where does that leave us regarding Rabbi Yochanan? What were we trying to prove about or for Rabbi Yochanan?
We were trying to find proof more that Rabbi Yochanan's accepting Rabbi Matya ben Charash's opinion was stronger because the Chachamim also agreed with Rabbi Matya ben Charash, but the conclusion is no, they don't agree with him, and therefore we're still stuck with the Rabbi Yochanan justifying his actions based on the opinion of a single Tana.
Very good. Very, very good. So that's what we're up to. We know that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Matya ben Charash, the Choshesh B'Piv, the Tilim Lo Sam B'Shabbat. We know that he holds like that because he himself took treatment for when he was Choshesh B'Piv. He took treatment for Tzafidna on Shabbos. So what's the basis? The basis would seem to be that he's holding like Rabbi Matya ben Charash. But that on its face is problematic because Rabbi Matya ben Charash seems to have a disagreement about this with the Chachamim. So how could Rabbi Yochanan hold like Rabbi Matya ben Charash over the Chachamim? So I bring a braita where I want to show that I could argue that Chachamim agree with Rabbi Matya ben Charash about that particular case of a choshesh bigron or a choshesh b'fi b'shabbat, and then the Gemara rejects that and they say no, it's not a proof. So that's what we're up to right now. So Paul, I'm going to ask you to unmute and you're going to continue reading. Hachinami mistabra.
I'm mute.
Yeah.
I'm in mute. Oh, okay.
Now we hear you.
Okay. Achiname mistabra dechanya.
Ditanya.
דתניא. שלושה דברים אמר רבי ישמעאל ברבי יוסי, ששמע משום רבי מתיה בן חרש. מקיזים דם לשרון חי בשבת, ומי שנשכו כלב שותה, מאכילים אותו מחצי הכבד שלו, והחושש בפיו מטילים לו סם בשבת. וחכמים אומרים, ואלו אין בהם משום רפואה.
Okay, so stop there. Let's stop there and just understand this.
What happens? I
Okay.
don't understand. This is in Hebrew. They repeat what we read before in Aramaic in Hebrew.
No.
It's exactly the same.
It's not exactly the same. This is different. In the previous Braita, we had 3 dinim in the name of Rabbi Matya ben Charash. What were the 3 dinim in the previous Braita? Misha chazo yerakon, Misha neshacho kelev shoteh, v'choshesh befiv. Those were the 3 cases. What are the cases here? Shoshat Varim Amar Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi Sheshama Mishum Rabbi Matya ben Charash. So this is altogether a different source. This is now not this is not from Rabbi Matya ben Charash himself, but from one of his students, Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi. He said 3 things in the name of Rabbi Matya ben Charash. And what are they? Kizin dam lisrunchi b'Shabbat, kelev shoteh,
Is this in other
befiv.
Baraita?
So this is an entirely different Braita. This is a different Braita. Okay? And so this one, it also has 3 things, but they're not the same 3 things as the previous Braita. 2 of them are the same, and one of them is different. I should have made a chart for this.
This is the one. It starts with the one which should be the 4th one among the preceding. Yes.
Right. It begins with the case that the Gemara introduced just a second ago to say that there's actually a 4th case, and that's the case of Sronchi. Right. Okay. That's the one it begins with. So in other words, it's not that not that we would have suspected, but it's not that just the Gemara pulled out of its hat, like, no, there's it could be some other case that we didn't talk about. The Gemara knows that Rabbi Matya ben Charash also had something to say about Sronchi, that he said you're allowed to be Mikiz Dam the Sronchi b'Shabbat. So now the Gemara says, Hachi nami mistabra. What does that mean? So literally it means, Hachi means, I'll translate into Hebrew. Hachi means kach, nami means gam, kach gam, mistaber. This also makes sense. What makes sense?
The Tanya from another Braita.
Right. This also makes sense because we learn in a Braita. So, what did I learn now in this Braita?
They remembered.
Go ahead.
So they remembered something about Rabbi Matya, but this is another memory which comes through another path to them, something like this.
Right. In other words, this is a hard source. This is a source. So yes,
this is a source which has already been written down, or which they remember, which is still.
No, presumably they remember. In other words, at that time, people did it all by memory.
Yes.
So the Gemara, so in the Gemara says when the Chachamim said that these do not constitute refuah, be'elu ein behem mishum refuah, the Gemara says the Chachamim there are rejecting all three of Rabbi Matya ben Charash's dinim in that braita, and that's the remedy for Yerakon, for Kerov Shoteh, and for Choshesh B'Fiv. They reject all of them. But why do they say Be'elu? Because they do agree with him on one other case, which was not mentioned in that braita, and that would be the case of Mekizin Dam Masrog. And so now the Gemara says, Hachinami Mistabra. What you're saying there, that this is something that the Chachamim agree with Rabbi Mati ben Charash on, about Mekizin Dam, that makes sense, because now let's see. I have a braita that addresses this. So what does the braita say?
But that's very strange, because they don't bring an argument. They say, oh no. We also remember something else. It's not an argument. It's just I remember it like this way, but another one says, no, I remember something else. Which I heard through another.
I'm gonna change a little bit what you said, because I understand you're focusing on this issue of memory, and what's at stake here is not necessarily that one remembered this one and one remembered that one. Let's go back for a second, because when the Gemara brought the first braita, there's the braita of Lema Messiah, and we brought Yerakon, Kerov Shoteh, and Choshesh B'Fiv. We brought those three things in the name of Rabbi Mati ben Chorash, and then the Chachamim said, Be'elu ein behem mishum refuah. The Gemara wants to use that as a support for Rabbi Yochanan, and they're doing it not based on a memory, they're doing it because they're dissecting the Braita itself. In other words, the Braita that they're discussing could be understood to be a support for Rabbi Yochanan. And that's why they say Be'elu.
Is it not another source? It's like they have different sources for the same.
But right now we're focusing on this source. To lay it out further, I want just to keep this to try to keep it straight. The primary source is our Mishnah, right? That's the first source. Without going through all of the language of the Gemara, what's our problem? Rabbi Yochanan holds. We know that he holds like Rabbi Matya ben Charash from our Mishnah. Our problem is, how could he hold like Rabbi Matya ben Charash? Because the way I understood the Mishnah until now is the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Matya ben Charash. So how does Rabbi Yochanan hold like Rabbi Matya ben Charash? So we say, here's a braita. This braita has three cases in the name of Rabbi Matya ben Charash, and I could read the braita to understand that the Chachamim agree with Rabbi Matya ben Charash in this case of Metilin Lo Sam B'Shabbat, of Choshesh B'Fiv. And in that case, then I'll understand that Rabbi Yochanan isn't relying on the Dat Yachid of Rabbi Matya ben Charash, but he's relying also on the Chachamim who agree with Rabbi Matya ben Charash. So that's what the Gemara means when it says, Be'elu, when the Chachamim said Be'elu, ein behem mishum refuah, why don't I say that they're rejecting Rabbi Matya ben Charash only about Yerakon and Kerov Shoteh, but they agree with him about some? And then the Gemara says, no, that's not the proper way of understanding the Braita, even though if you only had this Braita, you could argue that that's a reasonable reading of the Braita. But, and this is where I would agree with you, here the Gemara says, no, we remember another source, or we have reason to believe that when the Chachamim here say Be'elu, they're actually rejecting all of Rabbi Matya ben Charash, and they're agreeing with him about a fourth case that wasn't mentioned here. That's what we, and at this point, even if I don't bring any other source, if the Gemara stopped here, I would have to leave it as not a support for Rabbi Yochanan, simply because the Braita could be interpreted in either of these two ways. Either Chachamim are rejecting 2 out of 3 that are in the Braita, or they're rejecting everything that Rabbi Mati ben Charash says in the Braita, and alluding to a fourth case that's not mentioned. I don't know. There's no hachra'ah from the Braita itself to tell me which one of these readings is correct. So on that, the Gemara says, nonetheless, hachi nami mistabra. In other words, your conclusion that that the Chachamim who said be'elu ein behen mishum refuah, your conclusion that's to exclude the case of mikizin dam l'stronchi b'Shabbat, that makes sense. Why? Because in fact, we do, and now I'll say, yes, we remember, somebody here remembers another Braita. And this Braita is going to come to support your contention that the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Mati ben Charash on all of the 3 things there, but they're going to agree with him about a 4th thing, about Sronchi. So what does the Braita actually say? That there are 3 things that were said in the name of Rabbi Mati ben Charash. One of them is Kizin dam l'sronchi b'Shabbat. One is the Kelev Shoteh that we know so well, and one is the Choshesh b'Fiv, which we also know well. So it brings these 3 things. The Rabbi Mati ben Charash is matir. So again, in this case, he's matir 2 things on Shabbat, like hakazat dam for Sronchi, and to take Sam for a Choshesh b'Fiv. And he's matir another thing, Chatzir Kaved for Kelev Shoteh, any day of the week.
Although it doesn't mention b'Shabbat, but probably it's also b'Shabbat.
It's also, in other words, it's even on Shabbat,
Yes,
right? But the point is
also
that
it's not mentioned.
it's not mentioned because it would be a heter that I would need for any day of the week, because I'm feeding you something that's not kosher. Okay.
Yes, because it's not kosher. Okay.
Right? We don't yet have kosher dogs, which I'm sure dogs are very thankful for. Chachamim say, Be'elu ein behem mishum refuah. So here also the Chachamim come to be cholek, right? They come to disagree, but they seem to be disagreeing again in a limited way. They're saying these do not constitute refuah. So again, I have the problem of what does be'elu mean? Be'elu lemute mai. Michael Warner, why don't you pick up from here?
Okay, where are we? I'm sorry.
Okay, if you don't want, I won't press you.
No, I mean, I can't figure where we are. I dozed off. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm gonna pick it up because it's getting late. I want to read now to the end of this block, which will not be the end of the sugya, but it'll get us to a certain place. Okay, so Chachamim say be'elu ein behem mishum refuah. So we already know from the discussion earlier that when the Chachamim say be'elu ein behem mishum refuah, it's going to mean that they're agreeing with one thing and they're excluding 2 things. That'll be our first inclination for reading. So be'elu lemute mai. So what are they excluding? My love atarte batraita ulimute deresha. Why? What? So literally, why not on the 2 later ones, and to exclude the first one? Lo, atarte dereisha kamaita umute de seifa. So here also, in other words, I understand that Chachamim say be'ela ein behem mishum refuah, and they're going to exclude 2 out of 3. Meaning they're going to agree with Rabbi Mati ben Charash on one of the 3. 2 of them they're going to say are not permitted, unlike Rabbi Mati ben Charash, but one of them they're going to agree. So what are the 3? Srunche, Kelev Shoteh, and Sam. Those are the 3 in that order. So I'm bringing this Braita because I see that the Chachamim do agree with Rabbi Mati ben Charash about one of these 3 things. So I want to say, my love atarte batraita. Why not say that when the Chachamim say be'elu ein behem mishum refuah, that these ones do not constitute refuah, it's referring to the 2 later ones, the 2 latter ones in the Braita. So it means they don't allow Chater Kaved for Kelev Shateh, and they don't allow Sam b'Shabbat. And they do agree with, but then that would mean they agree with Nikizin Dam Asunchi b'Shabbat. So why don't I say that? And in that case, that would agree with what you, the Stam Gemara, just said a moment ago. Then the Gemara says, no, atarte duresha kamaita vilamute de seifa. I will say they disagree with the first 2. They disagree with Shrunche and with Kelev Shoteh, but they agree with Choshesh Befiv.
Why?
This is where we're going to stop. But we're going to have to do this part again next time. What's the point? The point is that, again, when I read this Braita, and it has these 3 dinim in the name of Rabbi Mati ben Charash, and Chachamim say be'el ein behen mishum refuah, I'm going to have a question about what be'elu refers to. And I have at least 2 ways of understanding that. So it's not going to be an absolute proof for anything. What the Gemara wanted to prove from here was that the Chachamim agree with Rabbi Matya ben Charash that one can be mekiz dam l'srunchi b'Shabbat. But if that's true, if that would be the case, then it means they explicitly disagree with him about Choshesh Befiv, B'tilin Lo Sam b'Shabbat. And this is the one that we're actually most interested in, right? Because that was Rabbi Yochanan's psak. I'm still trying to find a basis for Rabbi Yochanan to have paskin that he could take his remedy for tzfidna on Shabbat. So the Gemara says, what the Gemara is saying is, you don't really have a proof from here. You can't really prove it from here. Oh, wait a second. Oh, yeah, okay. We did this. All right, so this is where we're going to stop. Next week.
Is there in the Gemara somewhere else a place where we have this be'elu and where it's clear what it means?
It's always going to be a question.
But
it's
there are
always going
other
to
examples of this same
yes,
be'elu?
yeah, I believe so. I'll try to bring you example for next time. But we will come to a conclusion about this. But right now we're still in the middle of the discussion. And what we're going to do next time, we're going to continue to read. I think till next time we'll read at least till the end of the sugya, and we might need 2 shiurim to put the whole thing together. So, okay, so Michael Schwartz, you will not be here next week.
Correct.
Okay, well, have a good time with your brother, and Bezrat Hashem. I think when you come back in 2 weeks, I think we're gonna wrap this part of the sugya up, and then we may begin the next sugya. I have a feeling I'm going to put that off for another week, though. All right. Zema yesh. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Laila tov.
יישר כוח.
Baruch tiyeh. Bye-bye.